today is goodie bag day. You know, there's tons of little things that I've discovered over my time teaching and gone, wow, that is like, this is just a little, it's like a one-liner kind of thing, like, ooh, and we can go into it, you know, interesting, provocative, a tool, you know, like a thing that we can just, you know, even write down. I would recommend today having a pen and paper, jot down some of these because they are going to come like kind of point after point after point. Yeah, and thanks. Great to see some of the retirement plans being rolled out. Thanks to those of you that did that assignment from yesterday. And that's an ongoing invitation. It's a gift to yourself to do these assignments, you know, to go for it with the date nights, to be reframed forevermore for any mother asking their teenage son, especially, whether they want to do it. So date night probably wasn't the right phrasing. That's one lesson from this week. But yeah, to see that and to, you know, to hear what you're retiring from. And today, the assignment, I'll just tell you now, is going to be just a review of the whole week. So what have been your takeaways? What's been your the value you've taken from this week? You know, what are you going to lock down in writing? You know, sit down for 5 minutes, 5 hours, whatever your natural processing way is. Reminds me of Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen asked how long it takes them to write a song, and Leonard Cohen said 3 years, and Bob Dylan said 15 minutes. So you know, everyone's different in that way as well. So 5 minutes, that's all it needs to do to open up that topic of what have been the takeaways from this week. Yeah, and I would just say before we get into that, that there is no child I've ever met who doesn't respond to love, trust, respect, honoring, acceptance, and belonging. You know, so I, with all respect to this brilliant explosion of understanding and how different we all are, which is never ending. My gosh, I mean, I'm not someone who easily adopts the idea of neurotypical, but I also get it. So but yeah, you know, that what in some ways we've really wanted to open up this week are things, are ways of parenting, things we might have overlooked because they feel simple or they feel obvious, that are just so profound. You know, connecting with our children, having fun with our children, you know, being aware of how we're maybe not loving them openly, you know, blaming, criticizing, judging them, you know, just a heads up on like, okay, wow, that is the stuff that is going to nourish all motivation for studies or all motivation for anything. So yeah, whatever our whatever we're like as individuals, you know, there is no human being. I was listening to the Smiths last night whilst I was like powering through kind of what I needed to do. It wasn't probably very productive because I was so excited listening to one of my favorite bands of all time I haven't listened to in a long time. And there's Morrissey singing, "I'm human and I need to be loved just like everyone else does." You know, I think also a message to his mum, you know, that I don't know if that song, you probably know it, some of you, was specifically written about his rejection by his family as a young gay man, you know. That's completely heartbreaking. So, you know, this kind of provision, that's the ultimate. All the rest is like tinkering and playing with like minor details. What we really need is to bring in the Goliaths, bring in love, trust, respect, deeply held in our hearts for our children, and then like the rest are just details. You know, if you're raising a child with ADHD or any other neurodivergence, you know, you're going to be much more of a specialist in that than I am. My experience is you know, working with all kinds of children, and for me, when the relationships are fit and we get on, we make that connection, you know, I just usually, it doesn't interfere with what we're doing. Now I'm probably not bringing ultimate expertise to some areas when I work with students like that, but the results have still been amazing. So, you know, some of them, they don't want any chit chat at all. They don't want any mentorship. They're just like, that's not what they do. And that's so obvious to me. I'm very sensitive, very responsive. You know, that's what I'm good at with a teenager. is knowing like what's going to make them comfortable, how they want the sessions to be, and it looks wildly different between them. So some of them, you know, on the autistic spectrum or whatever their learning difficulty is, or their obstacle to learning is, you know, I just roll with that. So, you know, some of them are off camera, you know, I'm on Zoom, but they don't want to be on camera. That's just not comfortable for them. Totally fine by me. I love that. You know, I've done lots of sessions. Sometimes when I was traveling in India, gigging with this band, which I already mentioned this week, you know, I was still tutoring, and like sometimes the Wi-Fi wasn't good enough. It was just audio calls only, but they were some of the richest sessions. That communication with a young person, you know, looking at doing maths together, it was really amazing actually. So I'm all for meeting them exactly where they need to be met and making it just so that they're comfortable and happy with it. And yeah, you know, some need a recap of like what our objectives are. They can't just listen to it verbally. Probably most students could do with that. But you know, some parents have said like, my kid needs to know at the end of every session what you've decided to do for that week. You know, otherwise they're like, you know, they're forgetful or something, or they're, you know, so I just get prompted what's needed. But otherwise, the power of the relationship, the power of the approach has very rarely let me down. And so yeah, it has its own power. And then of course, specialist provision is needed. That like great specialization and professionalism in these, you know, again, an endless journey for Julia and for others just to explore this infinitely, because yeah, wow, that is needed as well, like actual expertise in serving all kinds of different learners.